So today I'm going to be talking about one of the most underrated Christmas movies in my opinion. And that movie is Elf, starring Will Ferrell. This, I think, came out 2004, and not many people talk about it now, which is a real shame, because it's actually pretty good. So the basic premise of Elf is that Will Ferrell plays Buddy, and he's going to New York City to find his dad, because he's actually not from the North Pole. He was abducted by Santa when he was a baby. But we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how Will Ferrell is going to New York City to find his dad, played by James Caan. If that doesn't sound like a genius movie concept, I don't know what does. So the best part of this movie is when Buddy gets to New York City, because the whole time he's been isolated because he lived in the North Pole where everyone is super tiny. And then he gets to New York City where everyone is kinda super mean. And it makes for some really funny scenes. One of my favorite things about this movie is Will Ferrell's costume as Buddy, because it actually looks really, really good. And I usually wouldn't care much about costumes, but I actually really like his costume in this movie, because it's pretty original, but it also really looks like the costume that the elf in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer wears. So I just really like this costume. It just looks really cool. Just a word of warning, do not go into this movie expecting it to be like the next Citizen Kane, because it is not. It is a very stupid movie, but it's very funny. That's like how all Will Ferrell movies are. They're very stupid, they're very self-aware, but they're very funny. It doesn't really matter about the dialogue or anything, as long as the actors are witty enough. Being said, I can pretty confidently say that this is probably his best performance, other than something like Ron Burgundy in Anchorman, but that's everyone's favorite Will Ferrell movie. Honestly, there really is not much to say about this movie other than it's funny. Will Ferrell is a little goofball, and he just goes to New York and causes a ruckus, and goes and meets James Caan, and, tries to be part of his family. That's pretty much this whole movie. But this movie has a lot of charm and a lot of wit, and it's very self-aware, which I like. So I really like this movie. It really holds up, even though this came out in 2003, which isn't really that old. Amid all the ridiculousness and very stupid, goofy comedy, it's still pretty endearing, and James Caan is pretty great as the boss who does not want to be Buddy's dad. Which is pretty messed up when you really start to think about it, because, you abandoned your son, man. You abandoned him, and you're like, he's not my son. He's 35. He needs to get a job. He can't stay at my house. James Caan is, so mean in this movie. I can't get behind that. So in conclusion, Elf is pretty good. I wouldn't say it's great. I wouldn't say that any Will Ferrell comedy is great. Because this movie has problems. It has some pacing problems. Not all the jokes are really that funny. But all in all, I would say this is a pretty solid flick. And if you haven't seen it, you should see it, because it's pretty good. So yeah, I'm going to give this movie a B+.